Okay, let's talk about 6, 7, and 8. So 6, 7, and 8, what kind of shape is that? It's been a while since we did that. We graphed it. What kind of shape would it be? Good guess, though. Not a parabola. Looks like this. Two words, starts with an A. It could go like this, could go like this. Absolute value function. Yeah. So this is an absolute value function. What's the vertex of that absolute value graph? Good. So -4, -2. So remember, we're going to use that today with what we're doing. So remember, when it's inside that absolute value there, we take the opposite of that, and that's your x value. So -4 is your x value. This number that's outside, whatever that is, that's your y value. So what would, can I get a hand please for number 7? What would the vertex for number 7 be? Lol, 2. I agree with the 2. +4. So on the inside of the x value, it's opposite, but this y value is the same. Okay, what about number 8? What's the vertex on number 8? Nate, what'd you say? 1, 0 is correct. So inside here, we get a 1 for the x value. The only thing I could add out here would be a 0. So it's 1, 0. Is that coming back to you? No. We're going to use that today. There's a pattern. It was the same thing. You guys, a lot of you were thinking this was a parabola. Parabola, instead of an absolute value, would have an exponent of, what would the exponent be for a parabola? We haven't graphed any graphs with an exponent of, oh yeah, we did do some graphs with exponent of 4, yes. But they were in factored form that we graphed them. So that's a parabola. So what's my exponent on my x? 2. So that's a parabola. Okay, on to the notes for today. So have we graphed y equals square root of x before? Is there anybody else that needs the notes page? Notes and warm up. Thank you for taking the initiative to get it. So, are you okay? So have we graphed a square root function like that before? No, we haven't. So what do we do when we don't know how to graph something? How do we start? Yes, we are going to make a T-chart or a table. So in this table, so if you don't know how to graph something, that's what you can do. Make a table. What's a number that we can put in there for x? So 0, somebody said. And if we put in a 0, we get square root of 0, which is 0. What else? So a 1. We can take the square root of 1, which is 1. I heard somebody else say 4. Very good choice. Why do you think that person chose a 4? Because you can take the square root of it. That's right. So you don't have to choose numbers that you can take square root of. It's just easier because we don't have to then reach to our calculator. If we took a 5, for example, we'd have to take the square root of 5 on the calculator, get a decimal, and then graph that decimal. We'd prefer not to do that, so it's nice to pick a 4. Could I pick, when I put the 4 in there, what do I get? 2. Could I pick, say, -3? I heard a yes, I heard a couple no's. So what, square root of -3? What happens when we take the square root of -3? It's I. We can't take the square root of -3. We don't know how to graph that. This is not a graph for imaginary numbers. So we can't pick negative numbers. The smallest number we can pick on here is 0. Okay, so let's go ahead and graph. 0, 0, 1, 1, 4, 2. We are going to connect. So when we connect this, this is going to make a curve that looks like this. It is not a line. Okay, it would be in a completely different form if it was a line. That square root makes it look different. So this arrow here keeps going up and up, but slowly. If you look at it sideways, it's half of what? What would it be half of if you look at it sideways like that? Yes, half of a parabola. And that is because a square root and a square are inverses of each other. Okay? Okay, so we talked about this 0 being the smallest number, and we thought through it. So rather than doing that, we're going to use what we know already about finding our vertex, except that in this case, we're going to call it an endpoint. So using the same idea on those last 3 on your warm-up, 6, 7, 8, what would my endpoint be for this here? So if it was an absolute value form, it would look like this. I know, something you haven't seen before. What would the endpoint be? So inside that, so inside here, this is your x value, +2 or -2? -2, because we take the opposite. And then is there anything outside here? No, which means the y value is 0. Okay, and same thing here. Nothing out here, so our y value is 0. Does that make sense? Okay, so we're going to start with our endpoint, -2, 0. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to get a second point. Rather than graphing 3 points every time, we're going to get another helping point. We know what the graph is going to look like in general. So we're just going to mimic that, but we're going to get a second point. So we're going to make a table. What would be another point that might be a good number to put into my square root? This one's a little hard.
9.
I heard several 2s. 2 is a good one to choose because 2 plus 2 is 4, and you can take the square root of 4, which is 2. So you don't have to do that, but if you use a number that you can't take the square root of, you're going to have to use a calculator, get a decimal, and you're going to have to graph that decimal. Okay? So a 9 would work there too. The problem, at least on this one, unless you want to go off the graph a little bit, the 9 would be a good choice. No, 9 because it's 9 plus 2. So maybe 7 would work there because 7 plus 2 gives you 9. I know that's a little tricky. And again, you don't have to do that. You can put any number there and use your calculator. Okay, so we're going to graph this other point, 2, 2. And then we're going to make our shape, which is not a line, but a curve. And it's going upward. Does that make sense? You okay? Hey, sweetie. Okay, we're going to find the domain and range. So what would the domain of this graph be? So if we did it in interval notation, -2, infinity, I'm going to do it in inequality notation just because on the homework tonight, the answer key has it in inequality notation just to be consistent. So what would it be? What would that be in inequality notation? X. So my X value starts at -2 and the other numbers get bigger or smaller? Bigger. So it's greater than, is it greater than or equal to, or is it just greater than? So equal because there's a point there. So greater than or equal to -2. Does that make sense? And again, I just chose this type of notation because the homework assignment gives it to you in inequality notation. So what about the range? Y is what relationship is? Good. So this Y value is the lowest Y value right here. That Y value is 0. So the other Y values get higher, so it's greater than or equal to 0. I know it's really easy to get the X and the Y mixed up. Does that make sense? Okay, let's move on to number 3. Okay, what is my endpoint on number 3? Somebody here at this table, what's my endpoint on this one? So remember, on the inside of the square root, is there anything that's being added to that inside the square root? There's nothing, is there? So what's my X value? 0. And then any idea what my Y value is going to be? Because that's out. -4. That's right. So 0, -4 is my endpoint. Questions on that? 0, -4, because you have to have that endpoint when you go to do it. Okay, so now we're going to get another helping point. What's a good number to put inside there? So 6, you have to use a calculator. So you can, that's okay. You just have to get a decimal. 4, because we can take the square root of 4. So we're looking at perfect squares like 1, 4, 9, 16. Some of those don't fit on the graph though, so we're going to pick 4. So y equals square root of 4 minus 4. What's the square root of 4? 2. So 2 minus 4, which is -2. So my first point is 0, -4. And then my second point is 4, -2. My shape again is a curve. Keeps going up and looks like that. So do not draw it straight because that will be wrong. It's not a line. Don't just connect those. And don't just connect those 2 points. It's curved. Just take my word for it unless you want to graph more points to verify that. What's my domain on this one? So this group here, tell me what the domain is. So is that your X value, the -4, or the Y value? Is that -4 your X value or your Y value? 0, good. I know it's a little hard on that. So it's X is greater than or equal to 0 because the X value that goes with this point is 0. And then the other X values get bigger. Okay, what about my Y value? Somebody in this group besides Shireen, because I know you know. Good. Y is greater than or equal to -4. So lowest point, -4, and the other points go up above that. Okay. So what would my vertex be on, or excuse me, my endpoint on number 4? Or 1, that's right. So my endpoint on number 4 is 4, 1. And then 4, 1. We're going to pick another point. What's a good number to plug into that? 8 would be a good number to choose. So the reason she chose 8 is she's thinking ahead. This one's a little harder, I know, when it's got a number inside there. She wants to get a number that's like 1, 4. We don't want to get 0. I guess we could. No, we don't want to get 0 because we already have that point there. So 8 would be a good number to choose, because when we take 8 minus 4, that gives us 4, which we can take the square root of. Does that make sense? Okay. You can pick other numbers. You don't have to. You just would have to use a calculator. So substituting it in, we have the square root of 8 minus 4 plus 1. Square root of 4 plus 1. Square root of 4 is 2. And that gives us 3. So 8, 3 would be my second point. And that's what my graph looks like. Okay, so what's my domain? Here, somebody here. What's my domain? We're looking at this point right here. What's the x value at this point? Your endpoint helps you too. What's your x value at your endpoint? It's 4. So it's going to be x has what relationship to 4? Greater than or equal to 4. Because it's got a point there. That makes sense? So now what's my range on this one? Weird. You know what the range is? So we've got, we're looking at that point. 1, that's right. So it's y is greater than or equal to 1. So this is my lowest y value right here at this point, and it goes up from there. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, go ahead and do the U-try on your own. I see some of you did it already. Awesome. Was this for the party? Cool. So cool. You just have that? Yeah. That's neat. Oh, neat.
So we're all getting like different.
Okay. Let's see what you got. What did you get? I like your -5.
Okay.
Because inside that square root, I know it's written a little differently, so you can move that -4 if you want, if that helps you to see it better.
So would it be -4?
+4 or -4?
-4.
Yeah.
-5. Oh, okay. Oh, I thought if it was in front, it didn't matter. And then would this?
So if it's multiplied by, it wouldn't matter.
Oh, but it's just okay.
Right. If it's a coefficient, yeah. Good question. Good point. Yep. Good. that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Good. So how would you do on the domain and range? I don't know. You haven't done that domain and range. Yeah.
I'll just play back the video.
Okay. I'll try to check in with you later on that. Thank you. Okay, answer up here on that number 5. Any questions on that? Okay, last one. What's different on that one, on number 6? The negative in the front. What did the negative in the front, how did that affect the graph? What was the transformation when there's a negative in the front? Reflection over x-axis. So instead of, what would it do? Instead of facing up, it's going to face down. That's right. So my endpoint on this one is -2, 0. And then picking a number here, we could pick 2. So y equals negative square root of 2 plus 2. Negative square root 4 or -2. So 2, -2. And notice it faces downward as we talked about. So my domain on that is x is, be careful since it's facing down, a little bit different on on one of them. So x is, what's this x value? Yeah, -2. So it's going to be greater than or equal to -2. And what's my range going to be? Do the y values go up or do they go down? Down. So it's less than or equal to, and this y value is 0.